Welcome to MegaBucks Radio. Conversations with successful entrepreneurs, sharing their tips and strategies for success. Real-world ideas that can put MegaBucks in your bank account. Here's your host, Nina Hershberger.
Hello there, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Nina Hershberger, and today my guest is Gary Morris. He's a marketing consultant, SEO specialist, and before we got on this call, he and I were laughing. We grew up not too far from each other. Well, maybe, Gary, you didn't grow up there, but he's from Michigan. I'm from Indiana, so, there's this kind of connection there. So, Gary, welcome to the call. What we're going to do, the purpose of this call, and Gary is an amazing marketing consultant, and we're right in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and the whole purpose of this call is to give real ideas, real tips for those small businesses who really may be pretty well hurting right now. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and there's really some very exciting things happening. So this is a hope kind of podcast. So, Gary, welcome to the call.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate people like you doing stuff like this, and just super glad to be a part of it.
That's awesome. So let's get right into it. We don't have an agenda. I told you that before we started. So I really want to hear what's happening in the small business world. What can you share with us?
There's two sides of the stories right now. There's pessimism on one side and optimism on the other. And you're not hearing a lot from the optimistic side. And I think there's a couple things that small business owners need to do right out of the gate, which is we don't want to replace any social distancing, if you will, with social media addiction, right? Because that's not the counterintuitive of what's happening right now. It's really important regarding what we're actually seeing and reading and allowing to go into our minds more than ever. So there are some practical things you can do on for instance, Facebook and YouTube. There are actually feed blockers that I've installed a long time ago. A few of them are acting up over the past few days because maybe for whatever reason there's, a high influx of internet usage and all that. But the point is these feed blockers allow me to go to Facebook and do business as normal without being inundated with a lot of the negative thinking that is going to affect people more than some of the financial crisis that's in front of us. The thing that's going to lead some of the crisis for a lot of small business owners is thinking wrong. And so I don't want people to be naive. I'm not deluded into thinking that this thing isn't affecting all of us, but at the same time, you can magnify, first of all, the way that it can affect you. You can give more power to the negativity by just drowning yourself in it. And we all know from a marketing perspective, negativity sells. It increases watch time. It increases advertisement. And so it's being pushed really heavy. So the very first thing you have to do is you have to get your mind into a mind state of creativity. You have to look outside of the box, and that creativity has to start not in survival mode as much as we possibly can do. So that's the first very brass knuckles tactic. Turn off your Facebook feed. I can go to Facebook now. I can go to the business pages, the groups I follow, the people I want to check in with without being inundated with everybody's thoughts.
So, Gary, that's a great tip. Can you give us specifics? What blocker? Give us a name of that blocker.
So there's, if you go, for instance, most people, the biggest majority of people when they're on the internet are using Chrome. And so if you just go to the Chrome store and you type in Facebook ad blocker and YouTube feed blocker, you can then just install those extensions. And if you're on Safari or anything else like that, you could just go to Google, type in Safari, Facebook feed blockers, and you can do the same thing there. It's just push button. It's installed in your toolbar. And then next time you go to Facebook, all you have is the sidebars and there's no feed there. I promise you it's a relief when you first look at it.
Now, when you say it's an ad blocker, so it's not blocking maybe one of your friends who you don't like what they're saying. It's blocking the ad.
No, it's not. I'm sorry if I said ad blocker. It's a feed blocker. So all it's doing is it removes the feed that's always going in the middle of Facebook. So when you go into Facebook, you're inundated immediately with thought and perspectives that you weren't ready to digest. And whether we think it or not, it does affect us. And I promise, as soon as you start seeing that stuff, it's all over the place. So now when I go into Facebook, the middle column. Now, I can't do this on my phone, which is another tip. I don't do a lot of social media on my phone. And I found it unproductive for the most part. And I'm an internet guy. I'm a SEO specialist. I'm a marketing guy that really is heavily on the digital side. But I'm fully aware of some of the psychological issues that an overabundance of usage of tools that are meant to help productivity are actually doing the opposite. So there are things that I've already put in place to protect my mind, and I think people need to be doing that. So to your question, now when I'm on my desktop, I go on my laptop, I type in Facebook, the feed that's always there that's just generating people's ideas is now gone. And so if I want to check to see what my cousin and, Southern Detroit's up to as a nurse and see how she's doing, or if I want to go to see what my father's been up to up in northern Michigan, I can just press that and I can go to, my mom's page or whatever it is, and I can see what they're up to specifically, but I don't have to be inundated with everybody else's thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Or on the other side, if I know I'm there to publish something that's optimistic, I can it says, what do you want to post? Just like it normally would. I post it, and then I'm gone. So
tip number one is protect your mind. What about shutting off the television? That's a good one, too.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely critical. The news, anything like that, if there's any time that we don't have time for this stuff right now, it's now. And the problem is with everybody on lockdown, we think now's the time we need to be in front of the TV. Now's the time that and there's obviously like responsible aspects of like checking up to see what's going on, but you don't have to be inundated with that. You need to be protecting yourself and your family from this really negative, we're more susceptible to a numerous amount of germs and sicknesses when we are battling depression and negative thinking. And so it's more important right now than it has ever been to utilize the tools that are in existence in the mediums of marketing like social media and TV and radio, but use them as your tools, not allowing them to use you as theirs.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm one of those really rare people. I haven't watched the news in 35 years. I haven't watched a second of it through this. I actually go to Twitter because I have a few people that I just want to follow a few people, so I know what's going on. But I don't fill my mind with any of that stuff. None of us.
And let's be honest, how much of what was huge issues really affected our day to day? Very, very little. Right. And it definitely didn't add any food to my table.
Nope.
And so I have a responsibility to, as a marketing guy too, I'm fully aware of how, again, I need to reiterate this. If it's free, you're the commodity. So when you're watching TV, sure, there's a cable cost and all that, but you're not paying to watch that specific production. Or when you go to Google and when you go to Facebook, and you're the commodity. It seems to be free, but it's you. And so you have the option to not be the commodity. And so it's critical that we are turning off things like the TV and refusing to be that commodity, because I see the ad wars. I see as negative news infiltrates our local news stations and our national news stations. I see the advertisement dollars go up through the roof. People are clamoring to get their ad in front of a greater audience. It's now flocking. So when there's something negative, people are running to the news stations, and the news stations have an obligation to their investors to continue to hammer home whatever's working, which is typically negative, and increase the ad revenue. And we just eat it up. We don't even think about it. So, yeah, I can't stress that enough. That's a really good point. The TV is by far one of the most toxic things that you have in your house. Now, it's a tool. It has benefits. There are things that I'll watch on it. I'll watch Disney Plus with I have 5 daughters, so there's plenty of Disney Plus movies going on right now. I've got, 3 boys as well, so we're out in the backyard yesterday raking and doing yard work and all that good stuff, and our girls are doing that as well. But the point being, there's things you can do that TV is entertaining for at the end of the day, but it needs to be held with a lot more esteem in terms of the potential to affect you in ways that you wouldn't even realize.
Okay, so now what we've got is this is what you shouldn't do. No TV, no news, protect your mind. The flip side, obviously, is hang out, spend time with those who are taking action, those who are making things happen, those who are positive. How do they connect with that kind of a group?
Well, the point of protecting your mind is, in my opinion, is to allow creativity to foster. Because some of the most explosive opportunities in business before the coronavirus things that are happening and post this economic issue and epidemic that we're facing is creativity allows for out-of-the-box thinking that allows for strategic opportunities within businesses. So the point being, there are ways that you could have been thinking, or you definitely now need to be thinking, that are completely out of the box. And you can start by looking at it. Here's the first tip. Now, this isn't going to work for everyone, and I would have to sit down with everyone and think through their customer base and strategic alignment opportunities and all that. But as a general overview, I always sit down with our clients during a consulting day and say, okay, who already has your customers that isn't a direct competitor? Who already has that audience? Who's already infiltrated that audience that you need without them actually offering what you do? And when you think through that, now that could be another online influencer. It could be another e-commerce website. It could be another brick and mortar down the street. It's offering something prior to what you're offering or after what you're offering. And as you think through that, you can begin to strategically align with them. I'll give you an example. We have a client that's in the real estate business and specifically in mobile home purchasing as wholesalers across the nation. And one of the things we look for are strategic alliances within the online world. And so we're looking for people who already have their audience but isn't doing what they're doing. And so we were able to find somebody who is teaching people how to do mobile home decor. And so what we did is we went to her and we said, hey, you've got something like 1 million visitors a year. So she had built this audience over the course of a decade, and she was getting 1 million visitors a year. We went to her and said, hey, we'd like to put an ad on your sidebar. And instantly, you can imagine a client that has 1,000 visitors a month that now puts their ad on somebody that gets well over 1 million visitors a year, instantly now has access to that audience that would have taken them 10 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to accumulate. But overnight, they immediately had exposure to that group. So there are things that you could be doing like that. There's a diesel engine company that's right here that is local in mid-Michigan that I was sitting down with just a couple weeks ago and asked them the same thing. They got to thinking and they realized that one of their biggest strategic partners is a part store. And a lot of people buy parts online. And so it became very evident this part store isn't doing the remanufacturing of the engine that our client is doing, but they are meeting a need at some point in that trajectory. And so therefore just doing the same thing, either do you have a newsletter, a physical one that you send out to your clients? Do you have an email list that we can get on? Do you have ad space available on your website? Here's a pamphlet when somebody comes in the store. There are millions of different ways that you can then reward them for having that strategic alliance with somebody that, you're not competing with them. It's just a marriage. And so it works very well. And so start with asking yourself, who already has my clients that maybe isn't influenced negatively during this economic downturn. So maybe they're doing really good business right now, and I can align with them and offer either a discounted service or you add features onto the end of it and say, I'm going to give you a year for X amount. How we position that from a marketing perspective, takes on a bunch of different colors that we don't need to get into today. The point is start with asking who already has my client.
So let's say take another one. Let's take another local business. How about a dentist? Obviously,
Sure.
dentist offices are closed right now for the most part. What would you? How would you brainstorm with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that there's the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to ask who already has my clients. Is there somebody in the customer journey that leads them to my door, or is there a certain type of client that I can generalize and say this type of client is the typical buyer persona? So we'll back up and we'll say, okay, who are your most regular revenue producing customers or clients? What is the demographics of those people? And if they're in the general area and they have a general, you can find out their age, you can find out, male or female, you can find out their income, you can get rough ideas of these things. And then therefore, or what type of insurance do they use? And you can do things like look for those same people. What are the things that they're purchasing right now that maybe are related to the industry I am? Maybe it's cosmetic, maybe it's hairstyles, or hairstylists, or things like that I know this clientele is still going to this type of thing. And or is there some type of offering that I can take that audience? You can now target people on Facebook in a very specific way. So if you have that clientele information, such as their email addresses, which you should be getting and putting them on your email list and all that, right now you could be retargeting just that audience, your current client audience, and offering some type of an amazing deal just to get cash flow, just to get revenue that maybe locks them in for the next year at a price that's so irresistible that they would be foolish not to take you up on it, even though they can't execute it on it this month, but they can start next month. So the strategic ways to position your offering would take a lot more one-to-one. But the point is there are things that you can do with past clients, and things that you can do with understanding your demographic that will allow you to be more creative in your offerings.
So in the case of this dentist, obviously, people are still doing drive-through with restaurants. They still need to eat. Probably one of their ideal demographics would be moms, because a mom will influence the entire one. Yesterday I had a conversation with a guy who's out of the Scottsdale, Arizona area, and there's a barbecue. I had 5 restaurants. And what he did was actually just 2 of those restaurants for 2 hours per evening. I don't know if it was 4 to 6, something like that. He had one meal. So for $10, you could come and you could get that one meal for $10. And you just drive through in your car. They had a big long pole, and they would have the meal in a bag, and they would reach it with the pole, and then you would drive up to a little place to put your $10 in. So they didn't even take the $10.
Wow. Yeah.
So and they're crazy busy, and they got media exposure up the lot. So now, let's think of for our dentist. What if he sees that or she sees that? And so what they do is they try to joint venture, strategic alliance, as you called it, with that. So they could put a special offer in the bag. They could put a toothbrush.
Yep. A stay-at-home children kit for the next 30 days. While you can't go to the dentist, we're offering you a free type of your stay-at-home dentist kit. As if I was at your home, this is going to include obviously a toothbrush, toothpaste, and some type of marketing flyer that takes them to either a free opt-in, or it could be a free offer without an opt-in. My preference is an opt-in, obviously. But where we're going to walk you through, and your kids, in a fun environment video, just a free tutorial on how you could be brushing your kid's dentist or your kid's teeth as if I was their parent this weekend. And so a free kit, something like that just gets people into exposure. Right now, exposure is a big deal. Getting your audience's attention, adding value, things like that are really critical at a time like this. And dentistry is one of those things that falls not necessarily, it's a luxury to some degree, but it's also a necessity. And for people that are very concerned about their own dental hygiene and their dental care, are frustrated that they can't be there right now. So,
well, and they could maybe they broke their tubes. Maybe in that little package they put in there, they say, "Look, we're open for emergencies. Call us."
Absolutely. Yep. 100%. Yep. Absolutely. So I'm even
thinking, not only teaching them about brushing or whatever, but what about just fun ideas? So go here. We're going to every day we're going to send you a new cool little thing to do with your kids. Doesn't have anything to do with dentistry. It has everything to do with just fun things. So, for instance, my son and his wife, they created an obstacle course with their kids. They have little ones. They have little 5-year-olds. And so just those things, because parents right now are looking for, like, what are we going to do with these kids? It sounds like you have about 8 kids. Did I say five boys and 3 girls?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, our life is an obstacle course.
Yeah. So again, they're wanting them on their list, but what they're giving them is just fun things. Maybe it's a coloring page today. Maybe it's just so it has nothing to do, but always the message: if you got an emergency, we're here for you.
Yeah, and it's really easy to just throw out, for me right now, I want to pause for a minute and say that there are dentists out there that are just having a very, very difficult week in the past couple of weeks, and they're looking ahead, and they're obviously just facing the challenges of figuring out how will they get through with it. And some of these ideas are going to hit home. Maybe none of them will hit home. The point is, the first thing you have to do is you have to begin by getting in some type of creative mindset. And this isn't new to this economy. This is something that some of the most creative and fast-paced dentistries have grown with strategic mindsets that are outside of the norm. And this is for any business. So this isn't anything unique here. In fact, as the owner of the business, you're going to have a better connection with your community and a better connection with what you're geared to do, that you can begin to think about solutions and ways to add value that I can't on the fly. And, I know neither one of us could address all of those right now, but I assure you there are a myriad of ways that you can be looking for strategic alliances or looking back at your past customers and figuring out our clients and looking, how can I add value to them right now, or how can I put a gate around them and make sure that they're being cared for.
Yeah, and I think we could go into this maybe being tip number 3. So, mind your mind, shut off the crap. Strategic alliance, number 2. But I think number 3 is actually, strategic alliance to me is who's got my customers, my joint venture kind of stuff. I think number 3 is actually being part of a creative mastermind. You say get in a creative space, but, my thoughts are my thoughts. And what helps, and this is why I'm even doing these interviews, because I learn more from talking to you than I do from listening to my own thoughts.
Yeah, yep, same here. Absolutely.
Who am I spending time with? Who am I masterminding with? Who am I learning from? And and out of this will come extraordinary businesses, extraordinarily changed businesses. One guy I interviewed talked about he had a teacher friend who was a tutor for high wealth people's kids. Do you know how his business has exploded right now? Because he can tutor anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
So what if you're a teacher who says, "Oh, I don't like this"? Well, you could have now all of a sudden birthed a whole new business, because I predict coming out of this there's going to be more people that may have second thoughts about their kids always just going to the public school or even the private school.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I totally, and to that point, I think there's a lot of industries that could already have been largely operated online, and this was the catalyst to push a lot of those in that direction. And so I think that there are people that have been putting off increasing their online capabilities that now are not forced to look at that on a more aggressive scale. So, and what's going to allow you to think about different ways to apply your online tactics is, to your point, getting together with other well-minded, optimistic individuals that are thinking creatively in your industry, or I actually like other industries as well, because there are things that are being adopted in some other industry that this specific industry hasn't even thought of, but the correlation is so clear once you hear it applied in a different industry, and you could just plug it right into your industry and watch for some unique opportunities. But you would never hear that if you're not a part of some type of group that's going to push you. In fact, I had on Leveraged Online, Ben Glass, a lawyer in Virginia last week, and the whole podcast was about the importance of connecting with communities and masterminds. And he talked about several points and ideas that came out of the mastermind groups that he was a part of. And I think it's important because as Americans, we have that Americana type of individualism that can get us into trouble, because we end up listening to ourselves all the time without actually checking those thoughts. And there are things that people can open up that we just would not have seen had we not been a part of those groups.
Absolutely. If we brainstorm online, since you're the king of online, it could be an online store. It could be an online delivery method, like the tutoring. It could be, help me out. Online, you talked about ads. So you could have a stream of income coming in from online ads.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to your website, for instance, I look at it as virtual real estate or your online assets that actually aren't simply made to just be an expense on your company's, expense sheet. They're meant to be an asset that grows, that increases in value because you're bringing more and more people in and you're investing more and more into it over time. And so therefore, now is a good time to begin to look at what are some things that I can be doing that I have maybe a brick and mortar location, but at the same time, there's a lot. At this point, I need to now look bigger. I need to look wider, and I can say, boy, I can connect my community to my virtual brick and mortar location. And there are things that I could be doing to drive traffic there that are going to help me and them during this economic downturn that we've been facing, that will come back around, and it will come back around very quickly. And therefore, now is the time to take that seriously. Now is the time to position ourselves to at least have that home base together and prepared, and to be investing in that to whatever degree that we can right now.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, I'm looking at the time. Gary, is there any more tips? I mean, you probably have a list of them. I want to make sure we get through them all.
It has to go back to me. The biggest tip right now is mindset. When I look at America as a whole, and I think about the people that founded this nation, and you picture a group of people that come off a boat, and they're standing in front of trees. There's no roads. There's no unemployment line. There's no colleges. There's just trees and unbridled territory. And they look at that and they go, here's opportunity. And they get to work. All they have is an axe, and whatever else they brought. But they get to work. And so here we are, and we're facing, yes, a challenging time. But certainly we have more than an axe. And certainly we now have a very bridled country and community. And so if they can look at that and see that there's nothing there, there's nothing but them and the world. And they can go, look at all this opportunity in front of me. Certainly, I don't want to be naively optimistic, but I can't help but go practically. It is foolish to think that here we are with all of the common tools that are in front of us. If we can't see that opportunity right now, it's because we're not thinking rightly. It's here. We have to position ourselves, again, not to be hopelessly optimistic, but it's here. There's opportunity under all of this if you can just begin to think creatively and look for some of those opportunities that are in front of you and plug in with other people, because it's not easy to do it yourself, especially if you're in survival mode. We all know what that's like. And when you're in survival mode, to be creative is nearly impossible. So there are some practical things that you could be doing to get outside of survival mode. Try to figure out some quick revenue concepts or ideas. But just be prepared to move forward and not to give up and to not inundate yourself with things that promote you to give up. And so once that's settled, the creative aspects of how to grow your business can really have fertile ground to grow in. You have to start there. And then the different tips and applications are abundant, but you have to have the right soil to begin to plant that creativity.
Very well said. Gary, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, do you have a contact or a way that they can, or anything you want to? Okay. Yeah,
point them to. So they can find me on Facebook at Gary M Live, Instagram Gary M Live. They can also go to Leveraged Online. It's leveraged.online. We're redoing it right now, but you can still go in, opt in for our email list, get some tips, rolling out our recent interviews that I just started back up this week. Our web design agency, the one I own in Fenton, Michigan, that's Grafted-In. And you can also email me at Gary@grafted.in.io. That's GRAFTED.io. Gary@grafted.in.io.
Awesome. Well, until next time, this is Nina Hershberger. Remember, as Gary would say, protect your minds, particularly now.
Thank you for listening to MegaBucks Radio with Nina Hershberger. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or to listen to past episodes, visit megabucksradio.com.